My name is Chloe Greer, and I live in a house where justice doesn't knock. It screams from the front lawn while everyone pretends not to hear. Last fall, after my father threw my suitcase into the grass and told me to find somewhere else to be dramatic, I went quiet. But when the bank seized his house and Megan collapsed on the porch sobbing, I stood on the sidewalk and clapped. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I just said, "Now the house kicked you out too." Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Have you ever paid the price for being the only responsible one in your family? Stick around, because this isn't just about a mortgage, it's about what happens when the good daughter finally snaps. It happened in the kitchen. Always the kitchen. That Tuesday morning, the air was thick with steam from the broken dishwasher I'd begged to replace for months. The walls were too close, the coffee smelled burnt, and I was holding proof that I wasn't crazy. I slapped the paycheck stub onto the counter so hard the ceramic bowl rattled. "I want answers, Megan," I said, my voice low, shaking. "Why am I the only one paying the mortgage when you," I pointed at her, "only buy Purina once a month and call it a contribution?" Across from me, Megan didn't flinch. My older sister, 35, unemployed by choice, always sipping something she didn't pay for, tilted her head and blew on her coffee. She had that maddening smirk on her lips. The one she wore when she knew I was about to snap. "God, Chloe, you're being dramatic again," she said, dragging out the word dramatic like she was auditioning for a role I didn't know existed. "I paid the full $1,400 again last month. You didn't Venmo me, you didn't even acknowledge it. I bought toilet paper." "Oh, well then I guess we're even," I snapped. Megan stood, casual as ever, adjusting her sweatshirt that read "Dog moms are real moms." "Always so wound up, maybe try yoga instead of yelling." "Stop talking to me like I'm the problem." My voice cracked. It was that crack, the tremble, that cracked something else wide open. "You live here, you use the heat, the internet, the groceries. And Mom doesn't say a word. I've asked nicely. I've reminded you, I've waited, but this isn't fair. I can't keep working double shifts at the diner while you live here like a guest who forgot to leave." She rolled her eyes. "Here we go, martyr mode." And just like that, I lost it. "You haven't had a job in over a year," I shouted. "You lie around watching true crime and posting dog selfies while I'm scrubbing grease off plates and wondering how I'll make car insurance this month." That's when our mother walked in. She was in her usual robe, her graying hair pinned up like she'd meant to wash it 2 days ago. She didn't even ask what was happening. "Chloe, why are you yelling? It's not even 8 a.m. Megan hasn't paid rent again. And I'm sick of pretending it's fine." Mom didn't look at Megan. She didn't look at the coffee-stained counter or the overdue utility bill I had tucked under my arm. She looked straight at me. "Sweetheart, do you have to be so loud about everything?" That did it. "Oh, I'm sorry," I said, voice trembling. "I'll whisper next time I'm drowning in bills." "Don't be sarcastic." "Then don't defend her like I'm the problem." Megan leaned against the fridge like we were arguing about cereal. "You always make such a scene, it's exhausting." "You know what's exhausting?" I said, turning toward both of them now. "Coming home after a 14-hour shift to find my sister drinking wine on the couch I bought, on the Wi-Fi I pay for, in a house where the only adult working is the one you all treat like she's disposable." Mom threw up her hands. "This again." That was the moment. The moment I realized they weren't going to change, not because they couldn't, but because they didn't have to. "I want a breakdown," I said, quieter now. "Starting this week, every penny you spend here, Megan, or I'm done." "And go where?" she scoffed. "You gonna move into your little booth at the diner?" I didn't respond, because I didn't know the answer, not yet. But what I did know, standing there with my paycheck in one hand and a hollow feeling in my chest, was that I wasn't going to keep playing the role they'd written for me. Not for free. Not anymore. As I turned and walked out, I heard Mom mutter, "You always ruin breakfast." I didn't slam the door. I let it close behind me, soft but final, like a match being struck in a quiet room. That morning wasn't the end, but it was the beginning. The moment where the good daughter started keeping score. That same night, I didn't come out of my room. The house stayed unnervingly quiet, like it was afraid to breathe too loudly around me. No knock on the door, no awkward "let's talk." Not even a clink of dishes from the kitchen. It was as if Megan and Mom had decided to pretend I'd evaporated, as if silence could erase the fury that had exploded in that kitchen. Fine by me. I turned off the light, sat on the carpet, and pulled out an old shoebox from under my bed. Inside were scraps of receipts, wrinkled utility bills, and torn envelopes with my handwriting. notes from months when I'd scribbled, paid, across another thing Megan had ignored. I lined them up across the floor like puzzle pieces, my back against the wall, breath shallow. I wanted numbers. I wanted truth. Something solid I could hold, something that would shut down the gaslighting voice in my head whispering, maybe you're overreacting. Maybe this is just what sisters do. But the numbers didn't lie. Over 9 months, Megan had contributed exactly $226.43. I'd paid just under $11,000 in rent, groceries, internet, repairs, and the vet bill for her dog last spring when Bailey swallowed a battery and Megan couldn't deal with the trauma. $11,000. I stared at that number so long it blurred. That's what it cost to keep peace in this house. That's what I'd shelled out in return for eye rolls, insults, and cold coffee brewed in a pot I bought. I wrote it down in ink. Goal, recover $11,000. Below that I added, timeline, by spring. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about dignity. I stayed up past 2 a.m., combing through my online bank statements and PayPal history, building a spreadsheet titled Reclamation. I didn't want to feel petty. But I was done feeling poor while someone else lived rich on my effort. The next day at the diner, I asked for extra shifts. Double on Saturdays. Marla raised an eyebrow as she adjusted her visor. You sure you can swing that with your school load? I'll make it work, she shrugged. You're the boss of your time, kid. I started skipping lunch, saving $5 a day. I stopped taking the bus and walked the 2 miles when it wasn't raining. I cut every corner I could find. I even posted my old laptop for sale, same one I'd used to finish my paralegal certificate, cracked at the hinge but still worth at least a few $100. When a guy named Doug from Charlottesville drove in to pick it up, he asked why I was selling. Trying to rebalance things, I said. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Back at home, I kept to myself. We passed like ghosts. Megan started ordering food delivery, always loud enough to let the bags rustle and the tip screen beep. She left the takeout boxes on the counter like a dare. Mom hummed more than usual in the mornings, a pointed performance of peace. No one mentioned the fight. No one mentioned the bills. But the unspoken war had begun. I didn't rise to their bait. Didn't comment on the lights being left on. Didn't mention the noise from Megan's late-night Netflix binging. I just added another row to my spreadsheet every time a bill hit my account. By the end of the second week, I'd saved $372, sold items totaling $620, earned $195 in extra tips. Every dollar was a brick in the wall I was building between us, a wall of numbers, a wall of proof, and maybe, someday, a door out. 2 weeks later, I decided to try, not for their sake but for mine. Mom's birthday fell on a Sunday. A milestone one, 60. We hadn't celebrated anything properly in a long time, and I wanted, maybe needed, to feel like I wasn't just living inside a cold war. Somewhere deep inside, I thought if I made the effort, if I extended something warm, maybe they'd meet me halfway. So I spent all day in that kitchen. Roast chicken with rosemary and lemon. Her favorite. Sweet potato casserole with the brown sugar crust she used to love when we were kids. Megan hovered once, tried to sneak a deviled egg, and I just looked at her. She backed off without a word. By 5 o'clock, the house smelled like the kind of peace I'd been craving. Warmth, effort, love manufactured or not. Relatives trickled in slowly, Aunt Lana and her loud laugh, Uncle Tom with his long-winded stories. My 2 cousins, Sam and Lacey, brought a cheap cake and a bottle of grocery store wine. Megan, of course, didn't lift a finger. But she wore makeup and heels and acted like she'd hosted it all. At the head of the table sat Mom. She wore a deep blue cardigan I had bought her 3 birthdays ago, her gray hair set for the first time in weeks. She looked genuinely happy as everyone toasted her, and for a moment I thought maybe this was working. Dinner's amazing, Chloe, Aunt Lana said, wiping lipstick from her wineglass. I nodded quiet. I didn't want to draw attention. Just smooth the evening. We were halfway through dessert when it happened. The kind of moment that sounds casual until the echo never fades. Uncle Tom said something about how these girls turned out so different, chuckling over old childhood stories. Mom didn't even look up from her plate when she said it. Well, she laughed softly, one of them always knew how to make a scene, the other knew how to make people love her. The room hushed, but she kept going, smiling like it was a compliment. Honestly, Chloe's never been worth half of Megan. Forks froze midair. A chair creaked. Someone exhaled through their nose like they weren't sure if they'd heard her right. I felt the words hit, not like a slap but like a knife that had already been waiting years in the making, sharpened behind my back. My heart thudded once. And then I said it. "Well then," I said, standing slowly, voice calm and cutting, "why don't you ask her to pay half the mortgage?" The air snapped. Lacey's eyes widened. Megan froze mid-sip, the glass trembling slightly. Mom's smile evaporated. "What did you say?" she asked, low and dangerous. I pushed my chair back. "You heard me. You've had no problem letting me carry this house like a mule. Maybe now Megan can pick up the slack since I'm apparently not worth it." "Don't talk to your mother that way," came a sharp voice. Dad, I hadn't even seen him enter the room from the hallway, but there he was in his old khakis and bitterness. His face flushed, eyes narrowing. "Enough," he barked. "If you're going to ruin your mother's birthday with your attitude, then get out." I blinked. "Get out." "You heard me," his voice boomed. "You want to play victim, take it somewhere else. You're not welcome in this house with that mouth." "Dad," I started, but he was already moving. I heard the closet door yank open, then drawers, then the thunk of my suitcase being pulled out and flung open in the hallway. Guests murmured awkwardly. Chairs scraped. Megan stood frozen, silent for once. My mother didn't stop him. My father tossed my suitcase out the front door like it was trash, the zipper half open, clothes tumbling out onto the porch. "You want respect," he yelled. "You earn it by knowing your place." I stood still in the entryway, throat burning. The walls felt too close. The floor too clean, my shoes felt heavy. No one said a word, not even Aunt Lana, not even Tom, so I walked out, not crying, not yelling, just walking. That night found me in a roadside motel off Route 33, the kind with flickering lights and curtains that never quite close. I sat on the edge of the bed, suitcase at my feet, listening to the hum of the vending machine through the wall. My cheeks were still damp, my chest sore from holding everything in. I hadn't cried on the lawn. I hadn't cried while driving. But alone, in that room that smelled faintly of bleach and old smoke, it finally came out. I pressed my palms to my eyes, breathed in, breathed out. "This is temporary," I told myself. "You've survived worse than this." Then my phone buzzed, a notification from my bank app. "Mortgage payment scheduled, $1,427.18 tomorrow morning." I stared at the screen until something inside me went very still, not numb, focused. "They kicked me out," I whispered to the empty room. "Out of the house I pay for." I wiped my face, straightened my shoulders, and dialed the number on the back of my debit card. "Thank you for calling Dominion First Bank," a calm voice answered. "This is Rachel. How can I help you tonight?" "Yes," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "I need to stop a mortgage payment scheduled for tomorrow morning." There was a pause, typing. "I can certainly look into that. May I ask the reason for the cancellation?" "I no longer reside at the property," I said. "I was forcibly removed tonight." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm sorry to hear that," Rachel said carefully. "However, as a co-signer, you are still financially responsible unless—" "I understand," I cut in, polite but firm. "And I'm notifying you now that my financial contribution is being withdrawn due to unlawful removal from the residence. I will be submitting documentation in the morning." Silence. Then more typing. "Ms. Greer," she said slowly, "this is unusual. I'll need to place you on a brief hold while I consult my supervisor." The hold music crackled to life. Some soft piano nonsense that used to make me anxious. Tonight it didn't. I sat back against the headboard, my pulse steadying with every second. For the first time all day, I wasn't reacting, I was acting. Rachel came back. "Thank you for holding. We can place a temporary stop on the payment pending review. You'll need to submit proof of removal from the property and a written statement." "I will," I said. "First thing in the morning." "Once reviewed, future payments may be suspended," she added, "depending on the outcome." I closed my eyes, not in relief, in clarity. "Yes," I said, "that's all I need." When the call ended, the room felt different, bigger, quieter. I opened my laptop, borrowed, old, slow, and began drafting my statement. Dates, amounts, names, facts, no emotion, just truth. I attached photos of my suitcase on the lawn, time-stamped. Screenshots of texts that followed. By midnight it was sent. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling fan wobbling above me. For years I'd been told I was dramatic, emotional, too much. But tonight I felt precise. They had taken my place in that house for granted. I had taken my power back, one phone call at a time. And for the first time in a very long while, I slept without my jaw clenched. By the time the sun had pushed through the motel's grimy curtains the next morning, my inbox held a response from Dominion First Bank. Payment on hold, under review. No further details, no warm wishes, no apologies, just confirmation. I stared at those words over a lukewarm coffee from the vending machine and let myself smile just a little. It wasn't revenge. It was responsibility, theirs for once. At exactly 12:16 p.m., Megan answered a call on the house phone. Yes, that landline we kept only because our parents insisted. According to Aunt Rochelle, who would fill me in later, Megan was mid-laugh, curled on the couch with Bailey asleep on her lap when her voice turned suddenly sharp. "This is Megan," she said, still chewing something. "Yes, this is the Greer residence. Who is this again?" Her tone shifted like gears grinding. "The mortgage is what?" The room went still. "I'm sorry, there must be a mistake," Megan stammered, pressing the phone tighter to her ear as if that could change what she was hearing. "My sister handles that. Or she did, I mean she always pays it." I silence. Then, "No, I wasn't aware." She stopped. "No, I don't have access to the account." "What does that mean, default?" She went pale. On the other end of the line, Dominion was explaining that the Greers were now in breach of their payment agreement. The full amount wasn't paid by the grace period's end. The account would be flagged for pre-foreclosure proceedings. Megan tried to talk her way through it. "Look, we'll fix it. It's just a mix-up. She probably just forgot or something. She's dramatic. She'll come around." But her voice betrayed her. She knew I hadn't forgot. I had removed myself from their world one quiet keystroke at a time. By dinner, the storm had gathered. My phone lit up with calls, first from Mom, then home, then Dad. Then all three again in rapid succession. I turned the ringer off, watched the screen flash, let the noise sit like background static. 12 missed calls, 7 voicemails. The first voicemail was sharp and bitter. "Chloe Ann Greer, what do you think you're doing? You don't just cancel a mortgage because you're sulking. Call us now." The second, angrier still. "We gave you a home, you ungrateful little," click. Then one from Megan. "Okay, you've made your point. Real mature. You happy now?" Mom's crying. "Dad's threatening to sell the truck. You win, okay, just fix it." And another later from Mom, more desperate this time. "Sweetheart, please, we can talk this through. Don't let the bank take our home. Just come home, we'll sort it out." But there was no "I'm sorry." No admission, no change, only fear. They weren't afraid for me. They were afraid because of me. I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up my notepad and added a new line to my spreadsheet. Balance of power, shifting. That night, I took a walk around the block, breathing in the crisp Richmond air that didn't reek of old resentments. The motel was still small, still temporary. But it was mine tonight. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was mine, too. I didn't answer a single call that week. Not one voicemail, not one text. I watched them roll in like tide after tide of guilt and noise and panic, and I let them wash up unanswered. On Thursday morning, just after I took a shower in the motel's cramped little bathroom with the flickering light, my phone buzzed with a different name. Rochelle Greer, my father's younger sister. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Aunt Rochelle wasn't someone I'd ever been close to, but she wasn't unkind either. She was the one who always brought bakery cookies to holidays and asked me about school when no one else bothered. She lived in Richmond, about an hour east, in a brick townhouse with blue shutters and a wreath on the door no matter the season. I let it ring. She didn't leave a message, but 10 minutes later a text arrived. "Hi sweetheart, I heard what happened. I have a guest room. If you want to come stay for a while, it's yours. No questions, just rest." I didn't even reply at first. I just stared at the screen, heart in my throat. No judgment, no lecture, just space. By noon, I was packing my suitcase again. Aunt Rochelle's townhouse sat on a quiet street lined with trimmed hedges and wind chimes. When I pulled into her driveway, she was already at the front door, waving like she'd been waiting for hours. Come in," she said, hugging me before I'd fully stepped out of the car. "Don't bother with your shoes. Floors are old, but she loves a scuff." I let her usher me inside, past a wall of family photos, and into a warm living room that smelled like cinnamon and strong coffee. There was a crocheted blanket on every surface and a tabby cat curled in an armchair that didn't even blink when I walked by. "The room upstairs is made up," she said. "Bathrooms across the hall. Wi-Fi's written on the fridge. But first, coffee." We sat across from each other at a round kitchen table with mismatched chairs and a floral centerpiece. While we didn't talk, she let me sip, let me breathe. Finally, she spoke. "I've been watching this for a long time, Chloe," she said, stirring her cup slowly. "I never said anything because, well, your father always insisted things were fine and I wasn't invited to interfere." I looked up, her gaze was steady. "But I saw the way your mother talked over you. The way Megan coasted. How you were always the one clearing plates, offering rides, asking if anyone needed help." She sighed. "You were the But glue gets invisible after a while." My throat tightened. I didn't say anything. "I should have spoken up," she said. "That's on me, but I won't be quiet now." I nodded slowly, the heat behind my eyes returning, but this time not from rage, from relief. "No one's ever said that before," I murmured. "That they saw it." "Yeah, that they saw me." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Well, I do, and you're not crazy, or dramatic, or ungrateful, you're exhausted. And you've been carrying more than your share for a long time." Something in me broke again, but softer this time. A quiet release, like exhaling after holding your breath too long. That night I slept in a bed with clean sheets and a nightstand lamp that gave off a soft yellow glow. I heard no raised voices, no doors slamming, no passive-aggressive sighs through thin walls, just the sound of Aunt Rochelle's cat batting a toy across the hallway, and for the first time in months I slept, not out of collapse, but because, for once, I felt safe. By the second week at Aunt Rochelle's, the story had started to leak beyond the walls of that house. I didn't tell anyone, not directly, but gossip moves fast when it's family, and especially when there's a vacuum to fill. Megan was never one to resist drama if she thought it made her look like a martyr. It started with a Facebook post. Just a few sentences, but soaked in implication. "You think you know someone, until they leave you in financial ruins and run away like a coward. Some people confuse vengeance with justice. I'm done pretending everything's fine. Family should mean more, no names, no specifics, but enough." The comments rolled in fast. "OMG Meg, what happened? You don't deserve that at all, broken heart. You've always been the strong one, don't let toxic people win." And then one from someone I didn't recognize. "Wait, did your sister really cancel the mortgage on you?" That one stung, because it was true, and Megan never corrected them. She didn't explain that I'd paid every single bill for nearly a year, that she'd lived rent-free with her dog and Netflix account while I skipped lunches to stay afloat, that our parents had stood by as I got kicked out onto the lawn during my mom's birthday dinner. No, she just liked the comments that painted her as the betrayed little sister. I didn't respond, didn't post, didn't comment. I just took screenshots. All of them, quietly building my own little folder titled, "Perception versus Reality." But not everyone fell for the sob story. The first message came from my cousin Sam. "Hey, I don't want to be weird, but I saw Megan's post and it didn't sit right. Just wanted you to know I get it. She's been skating by for years." Then Uncle Ben chimed in through a cautious email. "I'm not getting involved in all this, but for what it's worth, I always admired how hard you worked. I saw it at Thanksgiving last year when you were the only one cleaning up." Lacey, my cousin who had sat at the birthday dinner biting her lip as the drama unfolded, messaged me late one night. "I should have said something when your dad kicked you out. I'm sorry I didn't. That was wrong. I'm with you." Each message was a flicker of something I hadn't expected: truth. Not loud, not public, but truth still. Megan's next post was more desperate. "Funny how the responsible ones always end up being the coldest. Money doesn't make you morally superior. Some of us still believe in family loyalty." I almost laughed. The irony could have powered a city block. I didn't take the bait, just added it to the folder. Her hashtags grew more pointed: betrayed by blood, family drama, silence hurts. What she didn't realize was my silence was intentional, strategic. I wasn't arguing with her online. I wasn't defending myself. Because people were watching. And every time I said nothing, her performance became more obvious. Eventually, she posted a crying selfie, red eyes, blanket over her shoulders, captioned, "Some people walk away and don't care what they leave behind." 3 of my mother's church friends liked it. My aunt on dad's side shared it with the caption, "Sending love to Megan during this difficult time." And still I said nothing. Because unlike Megan, I wasn't fighting for attention. I was fighting for clarity. And quietly, behind the scenes, people were starting to notice the difference. 1 week after Megan's last pity post, I heard the knock at the front door. Not the casual, neighborly kind. The kind that comes with intent. I was alone. Aunt Rochelle was at the community center teaching her yoga class, and the house had been blissfully quiet all morning. But this knock wasn't friendly. It came with a presence, a rhythm that made my stomach tighten before my brain could catch up. When I opened the door, a man in a blazer held out a thick envelope. "Chloe Greer," I nodded. He gave a tight, almost rehearsed smile. "Certified delivery, legal notice, you've been served." He left before I could form a sentence. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the envelope in my hand. It had my full name in sharp, all caps font across the front. It felt heavier than it should have. Back at the kitchen table, I slid it open. The first page hit me like a cold slap. RE. Notice of legal action, claims of mortgage abandonment and emotional damages plaintiffs. Thomas and Diane Greer, my parents. They were suing me. I didn't even read the full packet at first. Just sat there, blinking. My breath came too fast, too shallow. The walls felt too tight. I read the words again, and again they didn't make sense. They were claiming I had maliciously and willfully abandoned my financial obligations and caused emotional trauma to the family through intentional disruption of domestic stability. The phrasing was wild, hollow, legal-sounding fluff that somehow still stung. There was a whole section about neglecting family duty, which felt more like a lecture than litigation. Another claimed I had caused reputational harm to Megan due to social media fallout, as if her hashtags came from my silence. But it was the final line that made my hands go cold. "We are seeking financial compensation and potential reinstatement of payment responsibilities." They wanted to force me to start paying the mortgage again. I laughed, a sharp, stunned sound that broke into something almost like a sob. Of course. When guilt didn't work and fear didn't work, they went legal. They were weaponizing the one thing I used to offer freely, my help. When Aunt Rochelle came home, she found me at the table, arms crossed tight, the letter spread out like a crime scene. She read it once. Didn't even blink. Then she said calmly, "They're out of their minds." "I think I'm going to be sick," I whispered. "What if they actually try to take me to court?" She pulled out her phone. "Then let's talk to someone who knows what's real and what's noise." Within 2 hours, I was sitting across from Marla Ferguson, Rochelle's longtime friend and lawyer. A woman in her early 50s with box braids, pointed glasses, and a voice that cut like silk. She read the letter silently, then set it down and gave me the kindest, most refreshing response I'd heard in weeks. "This is nonsense." I blinked. "Really? Legally?" She tapped the packet. "It's posturing. There's no contract binding you to that mortgage. You're not married to any of them. You weren't listed on the deed. You were paying it voluntarily. They can't make you continue." "About emotional damages?" I asked, still not fully breathing right. Marla raised an eyebrow. "They would have to prove in court that your financial withdrawal directly caused measurable harm and that your actions were malicious. It's absurd. Frankly, this letter wasn't written to win. It was written to scare you. And for a moment, it had worked. I've done everything right," I whispered. "And still, they find a way to make me feel like I'm the one tearing the family apart." Marla leaned in, voice softer. "They're not trying to win a legal case. They're trying to keep you in your role, the one that pays, the one that stays silent, the one that never pushes back." I nodded slowly. "I'm not that version of myself anymore," I said. "Then this is just paper," she replied. "And paper can be burned." I slept that night without nightmares. The lawsuit didn't go away, but the fear around it began to shrink. They had fired their shot, and I was still standing. 3 days after Marla shut down the lawsuit with 5 calm words. "This is nothing but intimidation." I got a call that didn't come with panic or manipulation. It came from Grandma Irene, my mother's mother. 90 years old, sharp as ever, and not known for small talk or taking sides. She lived 2 towns over, attended the same church for 6 decades, and spoke in the kind of clear, trimmed sentences that made you listen. She never called me directly. Not once in all my years had I seen her number light up on my screen. She'd always passed messages through my mom or handed me birthday cards with $20 bills tucked neatly inside. But that afternoon, I was folding laundry in Aunt Rochelle's guest room when my phone buzzed with her name. I answered with a shaky, "Hi, Grandma." She didn't waste a moment. "Chloe, I won't keep you long," she said, voice steady. "I just want you to hear this from someone who isn't pretending anymore." I sat down on the bed, the shirt I'd been folding forgotten in my lap. "You were right to walk away." 14 years of swallowing my words, of standing in the kitchen doing dishes while Megan flopped on the couch, of being the first to offer, the last to sleep, and the only one who paid, all of it unacknowledged until now. "I don't want to gossip," Grandma continued. But people talk. The Hendersons saw your mother cry after church, said no one would sit with her at coffee hour. I blinked. What? She's not used to being avoided, she said simply. Especially not by the same women who used to fawn over Megan's photos and your father's long stories. But now they know, bits and pieces, enough. My voice was quiet. You believe me. I don't believe you, I know you, and I've been watching for years even when I didn't speak up. I saw what they asked of you, and what they let her get away with. Tears blurred my vision, but they didn't fall. Thank you, I whispered. I wish I had said something sooner, she replied. But I want you to know, before I'm too old to say it, I'm proud of you for not staying small just to keep the peace. I pressed my hand to my chest like it would hold my heart in place. Thank you, I said again. She didn't tell me to make peace. Didn't urge forgiveness. She just saw me. That same evening, just before sunset, my phone lit up with Megan's name. The same Megan who'd gone silent for days after her lawyer letter failed to rattle me. I watched her name buzz once, twice, 5 times before I let it go to voicemail. Then came the text. Chloe, please, can we just talk? I didn't mean for any of this to go this far. I'm sorry, okay, just call me. And then a minute later, another one. It's all falling apart. No hashtags this time, no cryptic subtweets, just desperation. A few minutes later, she tried calling again. This time I answered. Chloe, her voice cracked as soon as she heard mine. Oh my God, thank you. I didn't think you'd. What do you want, Megan? I said flatly. The silence was deafening. She sniffed. I didn't know Mom and Dad were going to sue you. I swear I didn't push for that, and now everything's messed up. The mortgage, the house, Dad's freaking out. I can't sleep. I've been sick for days, I cut her off. You posted crying selfies while lying to everyone. You told the world I abandoned you. You let people believe I was cruel while you sat in the home I paid for. That wasn't fair, I know. No, Megan, it wasn't, but you didn't care until it cost you something. She started to sob. I waited, then said quietly, you're not the only one who knows how to cry. Chloe, I'm scared. So was I, and no one cared. Silence. Then I added, if you're calling to take responsibility, then start with that. Otherwise, don't call me to clean up a mess you helped create. I ended the call, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. I wasn't coming to save them anymore. Let them sit in the silence they gave me for years. It happened on a Friday morning. The same one where Richmond's skies had cleared after 3 days of December rain, and Aunt Rochelle had just handed me a plate of buttered toast like it was any other day. Except it wasn't. Because 20 miles west, the house I used to call home, my old life, my years of silent sacrifice, was about to be boxed up and rolled away. I got the notification around 9:03 a.m. A forwarded message from Marla, my lawyer. Notice of eviction executed, foreclosure finalized, property vacated under bank order, transferred to third-party ownership. And then silence, no alarms, no headlines, just cold official proof it was done. By 10:00 a.m., Aunt Rochelle's phone rang. I'm guessing that's not for me, I said. She looked at the screen, grimaced, and handed it over without a word. Dad. I answered on speaker, setting the phone down on the table. Chloe, what the hell is happening? He barked. His voice shook, not with anger this time, but fear. You already know, I said. You ignored every notice, you thought it was a bluff. There was a commotion behind him, yelling, heavy footsteps, and the sound of something crashing. I have men, strangers, walking through our living room, touching our things, he growled. They brought a sheriff, Chloe. Megan's losing it. Your mother's crying. This is our home. It was your home, I said softly. Until you decided to throw out the person who paid to keep it standing. You didn't have to do this, he snapped. You're punishing all of us over one fight. I stood, walked to the window, and watched birds pecking calmly at the neighbor's lawn. My voice stayed even. No, Dad, you're being held accountable for years of choices, one of which was tossing your daughter out on the lawn like garbage while guests watched. The phone crackled. In the background, I heard Megan shouting, tell her to fix it, just tell her to make a call or something. Then Mom's voice, thinner than I remembered it. She won't, she's always been stubborn, always had to win. I let them talk. Let them feel the panic I'd once known intimately, the kind that lived in your ribs and made sleep a stranger. You kicked me out, I said quietly. Now the house did the same to you. The line went silent, and for the first time in months, I heard them absorb it. Not fight it, not deflect, just sit with the truth. Where are we supposed to go? My mother whispered. I think you'll find a way, I replied. That's what I had to do, and I hung up. Later that day, I got a text from Sam, my cousin. I drove by the house. There's a moving truck out front. Neighbors were watching. Megan was sitting on the porch crying. I'm not saying they didn't deserve it, but damn, that was cold. I stared at the message. Then typed back, not cold, just overdue. And I meant it, because grief has a strange way of flipping over when it's not fed. It turns into clarity, into distance, into a kind of justice that's quiet and still. And sometimes it arrives on the back of a moving truck and a signed sheriff's order. The text came early that Saturday morning, from Lacey, my cousin. They want to meet you, at Willow Park, noon, said they'll apologize. Megan's coming too, but she's not talking, just watching. I read the message twice, heart still, not racing. Not dreading, just still. Willow Park. The same one where we used to have family barbecues, where I once spent a whole afternoon braiding Megan's hair on a picnic blanket while she listed out her dreams of being an influencer. Now it would be the setting for something else. Something final. The air was brittle when I stepped out of Aunt Rochelle's car. Dry, sharp, like winter was just waiting for its excuse to settle in. The sky was a pale gray, the kind that makes colors look faded, like a memory that isn't yours anymore. I walked toward the center of the park where the benches circled the fountain. Lacey was already there, standing off to the side with her phone clutched tightly in her hands, not hiding the fact that she was filming. And there they were, my father, my mother, standing beside each other, thinner than I remembered, older somehow. As if the weight of being seen, truly seen, had aged them overnight. Megan sat on a nearby bench, hood pulled up, eyes hidden behind sunglasses far too big for a cloudy day. I stopped a few feet away, said nothing. My father was the first to move. He knelt, slowly. His knees touched the cold pavement. My mother followed suit seconds later, her face red and blotchy, her hands trembling in her lap. People at the park began to notice. A couple walking their dog slowed. A jogger paused, earbuds still in. Lacey didn't look away from her screen. Chloe, my mother said, voice cracking. We're sorry. We failed you. All these years we thought we were protecting Megan, keeping the family together, but her voice broke. We pushed you out. We let you carry everything and still made you feel like you weren't enough. I didn't speak. Not yet. My father looked up, eyes rimmed with moisture I'd never seen from him. I thought being hard on you would make you stronger. I didn't realize it was breaking you. And then I made it worse. Megan shifted on the bench but didn't look over. Please, he whispered. We lost the house. We lost our pride, but I can't lose you too. It was quiet except for the bubbling of the fountain and the whisper of Lacey's phone recording it all. I stepped closer, just enough for them to see my eyes clearly. I didn't walk away for revenge, I said. I walked away to survive. I begged for years for someone to see how unfair it was. And you didn't just ignore it, you punished me for noticing. My mother let out a soft sob. You can't undo what you did, I continued. And I don't need your tears to heal me. They looked up, confused, hope flickering like they thought this was the part where I'd forgive them and pull them into a hug. But I wasn't that daughter anymore. I leaned down slightly, voice low and even. Respect isn't free. You've now paid part of the cost. And then I turned. I didn't look back when I passed Megan on the bench. Didn't slow when I heard her say quietly, she really did it. I didn't need a crowd. I didn't need applause. I had something better, myself. And I was finally walking away by choice, not exile. This time it was their turn to kneel and wait. Life didn't erupt in applause after that day in the park. There was no final scene with slow claps or a swelling orchestra. No inbox filled with family confessions or epiphanies. Just peace. The kind of peace that isn't loud but earned. A few days after the park, I was sitting with Aunt Rochelle at her kitchen table, now my unofficial desk, when she pushed aside a stack of old cookbooks and said, I've been thinking about something. She slid a notepad toward me. It was scribbled with rough ideas, menu themes, and a name circled in red pen, Second Serving Catering. I've had this dream forever, she said, and I'm tired of letting it sit on a shelf because I didn't have the energy or the right person to build it with. I blinked. You mean me? She smiled. You've got taste, patience, and you know how to work. I've got recipes and a kitchen we can use until we're booked solid. Let's do it, Chloe. Let's build something that's ours. And just like that, my days shifted. We registered the business, built a website, designed sample menus that leaned on her southern roots and my practical planning. Rochelle taught me how to make her signature honey cornbread and spicy cranberry meatballs, and I taught her how to set up online orders and manage quotes. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't just a laborer. I was a partner. We got our first real booking, a baby shower for 30 guests in a church rec hall, and we worked that kitchen like we'd been doing it for years. When we walked in with trays of rosemary chicken sliders and lavender lemonade, people actually smiled. They thanked us. One woman hugged me and said, "This was better than the caterer at my wedding." That night, Rochelle raised a glass of sweet tea and toasted the moment. To starting late and still being right on time. I slept harder that night than I had in months. Meanwhile, across town, my parents were adjusting to a life that didn't have a Chloe-shaped support beam holding everything up. Their new apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, laminate floors, and a leaky faucet, according to what Uncle Ben casually mentioned over lunch one day. "They're learning how to live smaller," he said gently. "Megan's got the couch." Oh yes, Megan. Last I heard, she was working part-time at a pet store on the East End. The same one where she used to blow my money on overpriced treats for Bailey. Now she was stacking shelves and taking minimum wage to survive. Her social media had gone quiet, no more hashtags, no cryptic some people posts. Just a single update from weeks back, working on myself. Real life is heavier than I thought. I didn't screenshot it, didn't need to, I already knew. Mom tried to call once. Left a voicemail that started with "just wanted to check in" and ended with "you always did land on your feet." I didn't call back, not from anger, but from a boundary I no longer needed to explain. Some things don't need closure, they need distance. And every day I spent in that warm kitchen, stirring sauces and planning menus, I felt that distance settle into something healing. One night, as we packed up leftovers from an engagement party, Rochelle looked over and said, "You're different now, you laugh louder." I paused, then smiled. I think I finally believe I deserve to. Exactly 1 year to the week after I was thrown out of my own house, I stood in the doorway of a sunlit apartment in downtown Richmond, holding a pen in one hand and a ring of keys in the other. The lease was simple, 8 pages, all clean lines and firm boundaries. No hidden clauses, no silent debts, just mine. The landlord, a woman named Sharon with gray curls and cat earrings, handed me the final copy with a grin. "First apartment, first time I'm living somewhere I chose," I said. "On my own terms." She patted my shoulder. "Well then, welcome home, Chloe." The space wasn't huge, but every inch of it held intention. The walls were a warm beige I didn't bother to repaint because it reminded me of oatmeal and fresh starts. The couch was second-hand, a deep navy corduroy piece I found at a thrift store and hauled in with Rochelle's help. I draped it with a mustard yellow blanket and threw mismatched pillows over it like confetti. Twinkle lights framed the windows. My little kitchenette had a pegboard wall filled with neatly hung utensils and a polka-dotted oven mitt I'd kept from Rochelle's kitchen. The coffee table was just a stack of old crates with a glass top, and my bookshelf was lined with cookbooks, legal pads, and a ceramic duck Rochelle swore was lucky. It was quiet. It was lived in. It was imperfect. And it was mine. Grandma Irene came over on a Sunday afternoon. Rochelle brought her after church, and I had lemon scones cooling on the stove by the time they knocked. She stepped inside slowly, cane tapping gently on the hardwood. Her eyes swept the space, narrowing in on the framed photo by the window, the wall calendar with catering gigs penciled in, the second serving apron hanging behind the door. After a long pause, she turned to me. "You look like someone who owns her own story now." I smiled, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "Because I finally do." She nodded, lips pressed together in that way she did when trying not to get too emotional. "I worried you'd carry that family burden forever, but you set it down. That takes more strength than staying ever did." Rochelle raised her teacup in a quiet toast. "To letting go," she said. I raised mine. "To never picking it back up." Later that evening, after the dishes were washed and Grandma was napping on the couch with a quilt over her legs, I stepped onto my tiny balcony with a cup of tea and looked out over the lights of the city. Somewhere across town, my parents were probably sitting in their rental apartment, budgeting every penny. Megan might have just gotten off a double shift, her hands sore, her silence heavier than her hashtags ever were. I didn't need revenge. They had experienced reality. And I had rebuilt mine, from fractured dignity to steady peace, from silence to self-respect. I turned back into my apartment, locking the door with quiet certainty. It no longer mattered who opened it first. I was no longer knocking, begging, or waiting. This time I had the keys.